Not the owner, but I am a great person for you to contact if you have questions or want to talk to somebody that's very close to the project. We're a very small company. There's only 5 employees. We're all very close to this on the team. I've got some of my business cards here up front if anyone wants to grab one, my phone number, email address, mailing address. Really encourage anybody to reach out if they have questions they'd like to have answered. As John from the PSB mentioned, more than happy to stick around, share some information, answer some questions, and as Karen mentioned, I think I'll start by giving just a very brief elevator speech on the project for anybody that still wants to know kind of what this is. I'd also like to answer a few of the questions that I heard a few different times repeatedly throughout the night. Try to get some of those answered right up front, and then just kind of turn it open to back and forth Q&A. So, as John mentioned when he opened, this is a ground mount solar project. Photovoltaic solar modules, just like what you would have installed on the rooftop of your home, except instead they're mounted on steel posts coming out of the ground and in larger quantities, much larger quantities. This project has a generation capacity of 2 megawatts on the AC side and would generate enough power annually to offset the power usage of about 250 to 300 homes. The reason this project is here in Vermont is because the Vermont State Legislature passed laws saying that Vermont utilities have to add a certain amount of solar power by a certain date. Part of that is a program called SPEED, where contracts are made available for projects of this size. And this project was awarded a SPEED contract on a competitive basis. They don't hand those contracts out on a first come, first serve or a lottery system. They make the developers bid for it, where we say, here's what price we would be willing to sell the power to the ratepayers of the state of Vermont. And then the people who bid the lowest amount for the ratepayers get the contracts. Another round has just happened. We bid into that, but some other developers came in with even lower rates, so we didn't get any contracts out of that round. But it's a good way of doing it for the ratepayers because it ensures that the developers are constantly competing to sell power to the state of Vermont at the lowest rate possible. So that's why this project is here, why it's happening. I also mention that because if for some reason this project were to pull out or not happen, the next project on the list from that round of power contracts would get the opportunity to move forward. So if this project wouldn't happen in Sudbury, it would happen in another community. And if it didn't happen in that other community, then it would have to go to a different community. Because of the state laws, the state legislature, these projects are happening in the state of Vermont. It's our intent to be a great neighbor if given the opportunity to proceed. I know many of you have concerns about that. I'd like to answer as many of your questions as I can. Real quick on some more project details. So, ground-mounted solar panels, roughly 8 feet high at the tallest point, covering roughly 15 acres. Not solid. There's about 25 feet between each row of solar panels, so it's very broken up. Other than these solar panels themselves, there's a gravel access driveway running through the center of the project. There is a single central equipment pad where there is some inverter and transformer equipment, monitoring and safety equipment, and then the electric output runs underground to Highway 30 where there's a Green Mountain Power overhead distribution circuit. That power is sold through Green Mountain Power through that distribution circuit. Other than that, there's a perimeter security fence. We have agreed to install it's kind of an agricultural knotted mesh fencing rather than chain link with cedar posts to look a little more visually appropriate for the area. Other than that, there are no other major components of the project. They're very simple projects to design and build. There's no nighttime lighting. Projects do not create noise. They don't create traffic. There's no moving parts, no moving pieces, no chemicals, no fluids, no waste of any kind. We think they're fairly low impact. Obviously, the big impact that I've heard people speak about tonight is the visual impact. And to answer maybe one of the questions I heard a couple times was the concept of, could we do something about that? Could we install some screening? And we did have a conversation with the town group a couple months ago about this, and I apologize if something I said, I didn't say something the right way, and I didn't get my point across well enough. Heard a couple comments tonight that, gosh, couldn't these guys plant some trees around the fence line? And we said, no, we're not going to do that because it's not cost effective or whatnot. That I apologize if that's how I came across in that conversation. That's absolutely not the intent of what I had to say. What I mean to say, for along Highway 30 or neighboring properties, we absolutely could plant some trees along the fence line. In order to shield a 15-acre project from view, these trees would have to be solid and like 100 feet tall. It's not that we can't do it, won't do it. We'd certainly be open to putting some trees, but I want to be honest. I don't want to be a developer standing up here and telling you, oh yeah, we'll put some trees and that's going to hide this thing from view and it's going to be great. Planting some trees along the fence line is not going to hide this thing, and that's the point I'm trying to make. I want to be honest about that. That this is 15-acre footprint. I can't hide this thing from view. Not because I don't want to or because I'm not willing to, because it physically couldn't be done. And we're certainly willing to install some landscape along the fence line. In fact, in our 248 petition, we do propose the installation of shrubs, bushes, and trees along the fence line. But we're very clear that the intent is not to screen the project from view, but rather to dress up the fence line, make the fence line look nicer. We're not trying to sell you on the idea that we can somehow hide this thing from you. It just physically would not be possible in that location. Let me get to a couple other quick questions that I heard a few different times, and then we can open it up for some Q&A. Please come up and take a look here. There's a couple posters. There's some imagery that we have from some of our other projects. We have 13 other projects in operation, very similar to what's being proposed here. Although I know there's some projects along Highway 7, just north of here, that you could go take a look at and get a way better idea of what this would look like than any picture that people could do. And then also I have some just site plans that were submitted with our 248 process. I don't think that's going to sit there on its own. There we go. All right, let's see here. The property tax question. So I apologize about the misunderstanding. I'm not a finance guy, I'm not an accountant of any kind. When I was at that meeting a few months ago, I had been told that the state legislature had made solar equipment tax and property tax exempt in the state of Vermont. It is definitely not so. So that property of this equipment would be property taxable, and the city or the town would earn tax revenue from that. I apologize about the confusion. I apologize for not getting back to you once we realized that. That is corrected in our 248 petition. So that was a snafu on my part, and but I'm happy to own up to it because hopefully that could be a potential benefit of this project if given the opportunity to move forward. We talked a little bit about the screening. Again, I'd be happy to entertain more questions about that, but because of the size of the project and the southerly slope of that property, because the land slopes. If it was perfectly flat, you could probably do, and all the surrounding area was perfectly flat too, you could definitely do a little bit more screening. We have some projects in California that are done that way, but that's not flat right there. And I would hate to try to sell you on the idea that I could hide that thing from you completely. I'm going to go through the list here real quick. I don't mind to get too into the weeds because I did take good notes, but if I took the time to go through each of these one by one, we'd be here for another hour before I even got to your questions. And I would kind of rather jump straight to those. There was a good question about Will the project be dismantled at the end of its life? I believe that was your question. Nancy, yes. In fact, as part of the 248 process, solar projects are required by the state of Vermont to submit and agree to a decommissioning plan, where the plan for not only dismantling the project, but returning the land to its original state has to be detailed and agreed to. There are triggers identified, such as either at the end of 40 years, which is the useful life of the equipment, or if for some reason the project sits unused for 1 year. So let's say for some reason in year 7, we just go belly up and disappear, and the project sits idle for a year. Even though that's not the end of the 40th year, that would trigger decommissioning. So what if we're not around? As a part of the decommissioning plan, we are required to pay the state a cash bond for the full cost of decommissioning the project before we can build it. The state holds on to that money in an escrow account in case we go away, the project has to be decommissioned. That work is already fully paid for and doesn't have to be paid for by local or state property owners.
So then that is any solar array in Vermont, that's a state statute, is that right?
It's not a state statute. What it is a requirement that the Public Service Board has put on all the solar projects so far, and they're definitely requiring of us as well.
And by whose estimate is the reverberation cost?
That is provided to us by the Public Service Board.
By
By the Public Service Board based on pass. One thing, they're definitely looking out for your interests. One thing that we have done, decommissioning bonds are very common for these kinds of projects. In a lot of other communities, we've taken the cost of decommissioning and have also said, hey, look at all this steel, aluminum, and glass you have out there. That has salvage value. What's the value of that? So take the cost of decommissioning minus the salvage value, and that's how much money we'll put up in the bond. The state of Vermont doesn't allow us to do that. They say, sorry, salvage value is just icing on the cake. You have to put up the full amount. You don't get a net the salvage value. So I feel like if you do some research on what they've done for other projects, I really think you'll find that they have the Vermonters' interest really at heart.
And is there a time frame that would be, that decommissioning, like if all of a sudden it was a year later and that's not being used, would it be done immediately, or do you have like a 10-year?
Oh, no, it's meant to enact pretty immediately. I'm getting a little fuzzy on the exact details once it's triggered, but I believe it's something like 6 months to 1 year thereafter it has to be completed. And again, not only removal of the equipment, but remediation of the site back to its original condition. Question in the back.
who's responsible for any damaged animals, like calling?
Sure. No, that's a great question. We, the project owner, obviously we have a very, very vested interest in making sure that project is well taken care of. If that project isn't well taken care of, it's not going to be making as much energy. We have many, many projects in locations where hunting takes place. Deer, pheasant, we have a lot of projects in open agricultural areas in the Midwest. And we have had a few panels damaged by, there's two in particular I can think of that it was obviously bird shot. And those are replaced by us. I suppose we could try to go to some sort of investigation and find out who did it. And, I'm going to tell you that is not our business, and we certainly would never do that. You'll have to take that with a grain of salt. I understand.
They actually do it, yeah.
But if we found someone like intentionally, vandalizing our property, we would pursue that.
Bird shot doesn't really damage them. You take 300 weather back, and that's going to go quite a ways.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have insurance for all of
So
them.
what you're saying is Sudbury is not responsible?
No, there would be no way that we as a private property owner would be able to levy the town of Sudbury in any way for something like that. And that's
Unless it was vandalism.
well, even if it was vandalism, the town of Sudbury wouldn't be liable. So This project is owned privately, we're a private company, it's a private asset, so the same as any of your homes or businesses that you own. It would be exactly the same as, someone, had a hunting accident and took out one of your windows. Well, who's the responsible party there? Very similar here, type of situation. So, ma'am.
What makes these two sites here in Sudbury so good for this type of project? Why
Well,
did you choose it?
You mentioned 2 sites. We only have 1 site here in Sudbury.
Oh, it's a different company, okay.
Okay,
All right, I
yeah,
misunderstood.
I know someone mentioned another project along Highway 3. Must be one of our competitors.
Okay. All right, so why did you choose this site?
Sure.
Your company?
So the way that the speed program works is that you as a developer have to submit a project proposal, and that project has to be tied to a specific piece of land. You can't earn a contract and then choose your site. So you have to go into it with a specific piece of property in mind. They open these rounds up with a very short window. So when they announce a new round, you typically only have 3 or 4 weeks to put something together. What that means is you have to go find properties that are on the market at that time. So that's number 1. It was on the market at the time. Hear a lot of people suggesting, oh, there's this site over here that might be good, this site over there. If it wasn't on the market at the time, we have no way of knowing about it. So number 1, on the market at the time. Number 2, we look at topography. That site has a little bit of rolling topography, but it's not bad. There's a lot of remote land here in the state of Vermont that has very severe topography, and you couldn't build a project like this. It's also open, clear, hayfield. If we were proposing to do a project where we had to clear cut 15 acres of native forest, we wouldn't even be in front of you tonight. We wouldn't even gotten that far. That just would not be allowed. So it has to be clear and open. It also has to be by power. We can't choose a site that is not near an electric line. We have to have a way to deliver that power. A kind of rider along with that is that if you're by an electric line, you're also nearby somebody, home or business. So because these are distribution scale projects, although it's certainly nice to imagine, well, couldn't we find somewhere just like way out of the way, just miles away from anybody, and then no one would have to worry about it? Well, you could build it out there, but you couldn't get the power out. So there's also, and just to be totally upfront, there's an economic component. Because the developers are racing to the bottom, competing against each other to give the state of Vermont the lowest price possible for that electric power to keep the rates on Vermont ratepayers from going up. Those prices are low and the margins are very thin. Now I know our particular financial margins are not your concern, but what it does mean is that when we often hear suggestions, why don't you go put this in an industrial park? Well, it's because industrial park land is 50, 70, 80 grand an acre. And there's no way that a 15-acre project at the rates would work. And so because of the way that the state of Vermont has structured the competitive bidding process, there is a need to find land that is buildable, permittable for the 248 process, and also economically viable for the state of Vermont ratepayers. So, kind of got long-winded there. Sorry, but I wanted to give you a good answer. It was a good question. Sir, and then it'll get to you now. Sir.
Can you give us the number that you have plugged in for your projected tax liability to the town?
I cannot at this moment, for 2 reasons. Number 1, I don't know it off the top of my head. That number will evolve as if we get closer and closer to construction. Once you actually start purchasing equipment, those numbers lock in. Number 2, at this time, I would be told by our kind of legal guy that would be considered proprietary information. What I can tell you is that earlier tonight, we heard someone in the crowd mention the number $8 million. And I would say that's probably a little on the high side for a project like this. Solar equipment continues to fall in price, which is, again, a good deal for ratepayers because the cost of power can get less and less. I would say it would be closer to the neighborhood of $6 million. And that would be including the value of the land, which sometimes people don't include in that number. So in that neighborhood, it's about as specific as I can get right now. Obviously, when it came time to work with the city on tax rolls, we'd have to get very specific. And that would maybe become public information at that time. I don't know exactly how it works. Hope that answered your question as best as I can.
Well, not really, because I'm guessing you have an exact number plugged in.
No, I honestly do not. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not our finance guy, and I can't answer the question any better than that right now. Apologize. Ma'am.
Okay, so you kind of touched on what a comment or question is going to be. So I heard that solar equipment will be taxable, and somebody said $2 million, whatever. Right now, that piece of land is taxed as agricultural.
Mm-hmm.
Once that goes in there, what does that do to the tax rate for that piece of land? Is it taxed as commercial, industrial?
Sure.
And then, the second part,
Sure.
if it's decommissioned, what happens to that tax rate? Does it go back to agricultural?
So, again, I'm not a tax attorney. I really don't know the exact answer, but here is how I think it works based upon my experience with some of our other projects. We are not proposing a change of zone for that property. That property will remain whatever it's currently designated. The solar property going onto it will be taxed as an improvement, and the land will continue to be assessed. However, the city assessor sees fit. At the end of the project's life, once it's decommissioned, I imagine it would continue to be designated as an agricultural piece of land, unless at some point the town would reclassify it under like a general plan amendment or something like that. So, don't know for sure. That's my best guess. Sir?
You're saying that power then goes back to Green Mountain?
Well, the power goes through Green Mountain. So getting into power distribution would get very complex. But that is a Green Mountain circuit we're plugging power into.
Well, what they do with the power there?
Right. The utilities are all tied together through transmission lines. One substation connects to another. They can wheel the power around. What I will say is that those electrons produced by that solar project will definitely be used on the same circuit that it's connected to. So the homes and businesses on that circuit will be using the actual electrons pushed by the solar project. But then we get into wheeling agreements between the utilities and how they offset this and that. But John's comment earlier is correct that I believe the intent in reality is that this power is used in the state and not trucked out. There's Karen.
Yeah, can you talk about the maintenance, how you're going to maintain the site once the project is?
Yeah, so one of the things we like about this type of project is that it's very low maintenance. I kind of gave you a laundry list earlier. No moving parts, no moving pieces, so forth and so on. The project, once it's installed and operating, really is designed to sit there and do its job silently. There is periodic electrical maintenance, however. We see an average of 1 to 2 single pickup truck trips per month for electrical maintenance. And then during the growing season, maybe once every 6 weeks, send a landscaping crew to mow and weed eat. We like to keep the ground cover at a height of 18 inches or less, because if it gets any higher than that, now we're casting shade on the solar modules, and we don't want to do that. There is in addition to 1 or 2 truck trips per month, there is a single, maybe 3 or 4 day trip where scheduled maintenance happens and then panels are washed with a power washer. That's plain water, no soap, no chemicals. And that water is trucked in on a water truck. It's not pulled from the nearby water supply. For the most part, that is about the extent of maintenance. These facilities do not require someone there 24 hours a day or even 8 hours a day. There's not a staff that works there. And that would be the extent of the maintenance for a project like this. Similar to all the other projects that are in here. In the back, sir.
That property you got there, that you're gonna have 15 acres, is that the north of that wetland part?
Yeah, in fact, later on, I invite you to come up and take a look at the site plan document. We had the wetlands delineated by the
I know the
state.
property by heart.
Yep, and we're required to maintain a 50-foot buffer from the
Okay,
wetlands.
what are you gonna do with the other two meadows that are right there?
Those are going to be left as they are, native ground cover. We were talking earlier today during the site visit, one thing we've done on other projects is to leave land outside.
You gonna expand into those?
No, because we have to cross the wetlands to get to them.
Do you realize that second meadow to the back that borders Golden Forges
Right.
and the Bertrands? You have the right of way into that, it's going through my son-in-law's land.
Mhm.
There's no bridge that goes across there.
Right.
He's not gonna give you permission to go across it.
And that's certainly his right to do so. But no, we're not planning any solar installation in that area.
Okay, so I mean, is that property gonna be kept up, just like your other property?
It will be to local standards. One thing we've done is do like, native grasses and let it grow to native prairie. And then we've also, in situations where folks haven't wanted that, we just continue to mow it.
Second of all, the power isn't close to there.
It will be.
Well, yeah,
Green
it would
Mountain,
be, because
Green
Green
Mountain
Mountain Power
Power.
contacted me already.
Yeah, they have.
They gotta change all the poles that's been put in there, and they gotta put a lot larger poles in, because there is no three-phase wires that goes down through there.
Yep, Green Mountain Power is a planned upgrade along Highway.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, that's true. Which is one of the reasons we were able
I've
to
been
use this site.
contacted.
Yeah.
Is there any way, I know you guys have this all, economically planned out, but obviously there's big concern about these arrays being right in the windows of these definitely two homes that are on there. Is there any way you can just take that first row of solar panels and, then your 20-foot
Sure.
strip and just, eliminate that you guys would become so much more popular
Right.
if you did things like that.
I would be open to that idea, except for the fact that, again, I don't want to be someone that's standing up here saying, yeah, we're going to do that, and it's going to make your life better, because I don't believe.
I understand.
I've been out to that site, and I think the gentlemen who live out there, taking one row off the front of the, we're hundreds of feet away from those homes, so taking one row off, I don't think it's going to have a significant
But
effect.
do you understand what I'm sort of trying to say is that
Yes.
can you make it less invasive in people who are living right on top of those,
Right,
to some degree?
right.
And
I really appreciate the comment, and I have a hard time responding to this without sounding like no, we're going to do whatever it is we want to do. And if this project is going on that piece of property, people are going to do it. And because of the characteristics of that site, there's nothing I can offer that would change that. And so either this project is there and folks are going to be able to see it, or this project is not going to go there. And I appreciate the creativity, the suggestions, and I'm not really even saying no, but I'm not kind of giving you negative response because I don't want to, or because it's because those I don't think would make those landowners happy to remove a couple of rows of solar panels. I think they would look at the remaining 20 rows and still have the same concerns that they do today. Sir?
These panels are oriented in permanent position, they don't move with...
That's
Do
correct.
they follow the sunlight?
They don't follow the sun, they're fixed still.
They're fixed?
Yeah. There's a question in the back?
Just wondered why we get the Sudbury school benefit from the solar power, partially solar now in the school.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear all the questions.
Why cannot the Sudbury school be 100% benefit solar power? They're partially solar power now, solar. Yeah.
Sure.
Why can't they be 100% solar?
Like from this project?
Yes.
Because we don't have a physical connection to that school.
Yeah.
what we have is a connection to Green Mountain Power's circuit.
I've got a connection to Green Mountain Power, and Green Mountain Power to give us.
Right. And that would be a conversation for Green Mountain Power. We're under a contract. We're obligated to sell 100% of our output through Green Mountain Power into the Vermont Speed Program, and we don't have any flexibility there to do anything non-standard, unfortunately. And that's a contractual lawyer attorney thing. Sir?
Was it your proposal that was reported in the local paper as to providing clover for bee habitat?
That
That's
does not sound correct to me.
So it's the other project.
No, we've never, I mean, so solar farm is a common term, same as wind farm. They're definitely not farms. It's interesting, there's a project out in California where they brought goats in to eat the grass and maintain the ground cover and tried to permit it as a farming operation first and a solar project second, and that didn't fly. But no, we're not proposing anything like this. I mean, this is a solar plant, and nothing else, so. Sir?
Yeah, 2 megawatts you said?
AC, yes.
Is that in full sunshine in the summer? And what's the difference in the winter?
Sure. So, yeah, so 2 megawatts is its maximum output. It's its maximum connection to the grid. We can't send any more than 2 megawatts at any moment in time. So that would be at not only full sunlight, but also partial sunlight. Just getting a little bit into the electrical kind of geekery. The project is 2.8 megawatts on the DC side. So it's larger on the DC side than it is on the AC side. So even at times of the day where the sun isn't at full power, we still have enough solar modules to fill that 2 megawatt pipe for a few hours each day. Now, it may have been your question earlier. I mean, you mentioned wintertime, and someone earlier tonight asked you
Yeah,
a
I
question
had
about
a
winter.
solar system on my house for 10 years, and in the winter I couldn't get anything out of it.
So we have projects that in locations that get more snow and ice than you do here in this location. We've got a project in Minnesota and a number of projects in northern Indiana that gets the lake effect snow off of Lake Superior all winter. So during times when the solar panels are covered with a thick snow cover, you're right, output is significantly reduced. But that is accounted for in the financial model for the project. We anticipate reduction of up to 50% reduction of up to 50% of our solar production during the winter months because of snow cover. And that's
Well, you know, with clear panels, you only get a couple hours a day, right? In the winter? And then the sun doesn't come up till 9, and you're gone at 3.
Yeah. So there's 6 hours right there, and it's not full sunlight. You know, it's the sun's lower in the sky. Definitely, but I mean, we have a full performance model that shows each week of the year how much we expect to produce, and we base the whole of the project. Ma'am.
I sort of feel like we don't have much power in this situation. It sounds like the Public Service Board's going to do what they want. You're going to do what you want. We're kind of left holding the bag regardless, whatever we try to do, which is a terrible way to feel, in my humble opinion. I feel we should be able to control what happens in our town. That being said, I think it would really behoove you guys to plant non-GMO white clover, to put up beehives, to make the place as amenable as possible. Don't smile, you should be writing this stuff down. As amenable as possible for the community, because this is an agricultural community. You guys are bringing this Star Wars thing in, and you need to make it so we can accept it. The other thing, from a philanthropic point of view, I don't see how you're doing a lot for our town. However, we do have a project at Sudbury School that I'd like to discuss with you, which will only cost your company like $1,000 a year, and it might shut me up. So, let's talk about that.
No, there's a couple really great things in that comment, and I want to respond to a couple of them. You mentioned the process. And so Vermont is very unique. We've never seen this before. As I mentioned, we have projects in many other states. And in each of those, we have had to go through a process very similar to, I think, what you folks are used to, which is where we go to this county or the city, apply for a conditional use permit, or apply for a zoning variance or what have you, go through that process. If that had been the lay of the land here, we absolutely would have done that. We have not done anything special here. We haven't lobbied for special treatment or tried anything funky, crazy to get around the rules. This is what the state legislature of Vermont has set forth as the process, and we can only follow that process. We can't go to the Public Service Board and say, hey, we'd rather get a CUP from the town of Sudbury instead. This is what your elected state representatives have set in place in the state of Vermont. So I definitely understand those concerns. I agree. It does seem to cut out the local governance aspect of it quite a bit. I understand slightly the reasoning that they were thinking when they put that type of plan into place. We're just trying our best to follow the process that is in place. As I mentioned, I'm going to leave my cards here, and I really do encourage anybody with suggestions to email me. We will take those into consideration. I know you got to take this with a grain of salt, but we really would love to be a good neighbor if given the opportunity to proceed. I think a lot of times in communities that we've gotten into where folks are maybe against the project, don't want to see it happen, the only suggestion that they send us is go away. And that's a totally valid suggestion. However, maybe send me that suggestion first and then say, but if you're going to be here, maybe consider these things. I think it's a good opportunity for you to let me know if there are things you'd like to see. And I'd be happy to chat with you about those things. We talked about, moving the rows or doing screening, and I'm more than happy to continue those conversations. We're going to be putting in some landscaping, but I just know when it's in, we can look at that and say, well, that doesn't do anything. But continue to send me suggestions if you have suggestions on, hey, well, if we're going to have to live with these guys, maybe they could do this. I want to hear about that. I want to know about it. And so I'm going to leave that stack of cards. Please email me, call me. It will be heard. I appreciate the suggestion. As far as keeping, any sort of fees on there, we've never really thought about that. We'd have to do some research on, what the cost and liabilities would be, but it's certainly something we'll consider. If that would be a benefit at a low,
Perhaps
impact to the project.
maybe you could provide bee houses for a
Let's
local
Right,
apiary.
and this gets back to, your question is, well, if you're gonna do that, then what's the plan, right? You can't just say you're gonna put bees out there and not have any details.
I'll just make one other comment, that you said to let you know what our feelings are, and if you want, if we want you to go away,
Yep.
I think that's the take-home message.
Right.
Go away.
And I hear that. I hear that loud and clear. To be totally honest, we're not going to until the Public Service Board tells us to. And that's not me being a jerk, that's just me, doing my job. If there's also an opportunity, though, to have any other suggestions you'd like us to consider, this is the way to do it.
So you haven't been, this is your first project in Vermont?
In Vermont, correct.
Do you have projects in the New England or New York area nearby?
I don't, no. We currently have projects in California, Minnesota, Indiana, and Georgia.
I think it's probably just a 5-person company,
We are.
and you're doing that many states.
Yes.
Is it one person a state?
I live on an airplane. We're pretty proud of what we've been able to do with a small team. Part of that is because, we're owned by a private owner. We don't, have a board of shareholders. We have a lot of flexibility. And these smaller type of projects, when you know how to do one of them really well, you can oftentimes repeat that. We do a lot of copy and paste. So we've enjoyed it.
Has your company purchased this land yet?
Yes, we
Is
own
that
it.
done deal? So if you don't get the permission to do your project, what are you gonna do with the property?
It's hard to say. I would imagine hang on to it for a while and see what happens to the land.
Oh, okay.
Man.
Will you hire any local people to help you maintain the solar farm?
Yeah, so here's how that would work. As I mentioned, there's nothing even close to a full-time job when it comes to the maintenance. We do not employ operations and maintenance staff. Again, we're too small a company to do that. We contract out. There's a number of different companies nationwide that all they do is provide solar farm O&M services. The particular company we have been using a lot lately, the way that they operate is we get them under contract, and then they come out and find like a local electrician or two that they can call, local landscape, because they're not going to drive their lawnmower equipment out from California just to mow, so they would contract with some local people, and that's how that would work. They wouldn't be contracted directly from us. It would be a subcontract. Right. Well, it's definitely getting dark. I see some folks are starting to wander, so I'll again point to my contact information. Please take a card and don't hesitate to